The pen waited on the oak table like a quiet trap. Richard Holston stood, alone in the top-floor office that once glowed with victory. Now the room felt hollow, as if the air had slipped out during the night. Dawn pushed a pale light across the glass walls, revealing dust he had never noticed before. The city below was waking up, but his world was shutting down. On the table before him lay the bankruptcy papers, thick, precise, and cold. They formed a clean stack, yet he felt they carried the heavy smell of something ruined. His lawyers would arrive soon. At 8 a.m. he would sign. The moment would end the empire he built over 2 decades. The silence in the room pushed against his ears. It was too perfect, too controlled. Even the ticking digital clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Richard lifted the pen. It was a gift from a former mentor who once told him, a signature can build a future or erase it. The metal felt colder now, colder than any winter he remembered. He set the pen down and tried to steady his hands. He had lost companies before, closed divisions, and faced angry investors. But this was different. This time, he wasn't just losing a business. He was losing the last piece of his name. He traced his eyes down the documents again, numbers, clauses, and legal lines that had been reviewed by his team. His CFO had insisted this was the only option. Save what you can, the man had said. We file at 8. There is no other path. Richard hated how easily he had accepted that. He hated the weakness that had crept into him these last few weeks, the shame of failure, the public rumors, the slow crumble of trust. A faint vibration buzzed through the floor. The cleaning crew's cart shook the hallway. Its wheels made a distant scraping sound, like sandpaper against metal. The noise broke the stillness and somehow made him feel even more exposed. He looked down at the top page again. Something about the print made his stomach tighten. Maybe it was only nerves, or maybe the lines were too dense, too complicated for a standard filing. He wasn't sure. He leaned closer. The fine text blurred for a moment, then sharpened again under the rising sun. He saw his name printed in bold beside the word liability. The word seemed to stare back at him. He shifted the page aside, scanning the next one. It held a diagram of asset transfers, but the diagram felt strange. The arrows pointed in directions that didn't match what he remembered from last night's briefing. He blinked twice. Had he overlooked this? Or had someone changed it after he signed the draft? The air turned colder. A thin line of sunlight cut across the table and hit the edge of the pen. The metal flashed, sending a sharp gleam across the page. The reflection landed on a small footnote near the bottom corner, something he hadn't noticed before. It was a single line, nearly invisible in the margin. He frowned. That line wasn't part of the original packet. He was certain. He slid the papers closer. The footnote referenced a clause number he didn't recognize, buried deep in the back section. His pulse kicked hard. He flipped through the stack, pages rustling like dry leaves. The more he searched, the more uneasy he became. There were markings in the margins, tiny adjustments, slight shifts in wording, not mistakes, insertions. His breath thinned. Someone had altered the document, and not just anywhere, right where it would hurt him the most. The clock on the wall blinked. 7:54 a.m., 6 minutes left. Richard stared at the pages, feeling the first spark of fear rise like smoke. Something was off, deeply off, and he was about to sign it. The first thing Amara Lewis heard at dawn was the hiss of the coffee machine, steady as a heartbeat in an empty room. She tied her apron with a practiced tug, smoothing the front until the fabric lay flat. The uniform was simple black, neat, and often ignored by guests, but to her it symbolized discipline. Her grandmother had once told her, "Wear your work with pride, even when no one sees you." That memory always steadied her before the long morning shift. The hotel cafe was almost silent. Chairs stood like still shadows, and soft music played through hidden speakers, outside the tall windows. Dawn stretched across the city in pale strokes of orange and gray. Amara noticed him the moment he walked in. Richard. She didn't know his face well, but she recognized the slump in his shoulders. It was the posture of someone carrying more than a long night. He moved like a man trying to outrun himself. He chose a corner table far from the door, lowering himself into the seat as if the chair might collapse from the weight of his thoughts. A thick folder sat in front of him. His hand rested on it, not holding it, almost guarding it. Amara approached with quiet steps. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but steady. He nodded without lifting his eyes. "Black coffee, extra strong." She wrote it down even though she didn't need to. It was the kind of order she could make blindfolded. Still, she appreciated the act of writing. It kept her centered, even when others were falling apart. When she returned with the coffee, Holston stared at the documents as if he were afraid of them. She set the cup down gently. For a moment, he looked up. His eyes were tired, but not from lack of sleep. They were the kind of tired that came from losing something important. He gave a small nod of thanks. She stepped back, but not before noticing the papers spread across the table. She didn't read his business. She respected privacy, but she couldn't ignore the way he kept flipping the same page, again and again, like a man searching for a missing step in a staircase. She moved around the cafe, wiping a counter that was already clean, checking supplies she had checked minutes earlier. The truth was, she was watching him not out of curiosity, but concern. There was something about the stillness around him that felt wrong. like a warning she couldn't name. Halston suddenly stood, pressing a hand to his forehead. He muttered something too quiet to catch and walked toward the hallway outside the cafe, leaving the folder open on the table. Amara saw the pages shift under a small gust from the air vent. One sheet drifted halfway off the table. She hesitated. Her grandmother's voice echoed again. Pay attention to the small things. They're the pieces that hold the truth. She stepped forward. Amara reached out to straighten the page before it fell. As she aligned it with the rest of the stack, her eyes caught a single line near the bottom sharp out of place, and printed in a smaller font than the rest. It was a clause number. She didn't know the law behind it, but she knew how to spot something that didn't belong. She had spent years helping her grandmother sort medical paperwork and bills, training her eye to find hidden fees and quiet tricks. This line felt like one of those tricks. Her heartbeat quickened. She glanced toward the hallway where Halston had disappeared, then back at the strange line on the page. Something was wrong in those documents, very wrong, and she was the only one who had noticed. The past rose like a shadow behind both of them, shaping the moment neither yet understood. Richard Halston returned to the cafe table with a slow, unsteady walk. He didn't notice that one page sat slightly straighter than before. Amara had already stepped back to the counter, acting as if she had never approached, but her eyes lingered on him. In the reflection of the metal coffee pot, both carried histories that pressed close against their present. Choices, histories made of tiny decisions, broken trusts, and lessons learned the hard way. Richard gripped the back of his chair. His fingers tightened as if holding onto the last bit of control. Years earlier, Richard had built his company from a single rented office above a hardware store. Back then he trusted easily, partly because he had to. The man who became his CFO, Calder Royce, had been one of the first people to believe in the company's future. Calder brought investors strategies and a calm voice during storms. But calm could hide danger. Richard remembered a late-night meeting months ago. Calder had placed a set of restructuring documents on the table and said, "Trust me, these details are small, but they protect you from deeper risks." Richard had skimmed them, exhausted, leaning on faith instead of focus. He signed without question. That memory now felt contaminated. In the cafe, he flipped through the papers again. He saw Calder's tidy notes, neat arrows, and precise margins. The markings he once saw as signs of professionalism now looked like traps prepared carefully over time. Richard felt a cold wave of doubt. How many times had he trusted too quickly? How many documents had he approved without looking at the details? He pressed a hand to his jaw. His past decisions were tightening around him like a closing door. Across the room, Amara wiped the counter for the fourth time, even though it was spotless. Her mind was circling the strange line she had seen in Halston's documents. She didn't know business law, but she knew patterns. She knew how to spot something that didn't fit. She learned that skill at only 13. Her grandmother, a retired nurse, had taught her how to read every line on every bill. They would sit at the kitchen table under a flickering light, matching charges, checking signatures, hunting for hidden fees. People count on others being too tired to notice. Her grandmother always said, "But we notice, that's our strength." Amara remembered watching her grandmother fight an insurance mistake that nearly cost them their home. She won because she found a single line, just one, where someone had slipped in a false charge. The victory didn't make them rich, but it kept them standing. That memory shaped the way Amara viewed the world. Details were not small. They were warnings. They were signals of truth. And now she had seen a warning in a stranger's paperwork. She tried to shake it off. It wasn't her business. Speaking up might cost her job. People didn't always want help. Sometimes they mistook guidance for disrespect. She had learned that too. Still, the thought followed her like a whisper. Something is wrong. Someone could get hurt. She glanced toward Halston. He leaned over the documents with sharp focus, scanning pages as though searching for something he wasn't sure existed. The lines on his forehead tightened. His breath came uneven. Amara recognized the look. It was the same expression her grandmother wore when she found a charge on a bill that didn't belong. It was the look of someone starting to understand they had been betrayed. Their pasts, so different in weight and shape, were pulling both of them toward the same point. The truth hidden in those pages. Amara's pulse quickened. She knew she couldn't ignore what she saw, but she also knew how the world treated people in uniforms, especially people like her. Many assumed silence from those who served them, and silence was always safer. As Halston bent closer to the pages, Amara stood frozen behind the counter, torn between fear and responsibility. She asked herself the question she had avoided all morning: is speaking up worth the risk? And for the first time, she didn't know the answer. The truth hid in a single sentence, thinner than a thread and sharp enough to cut everything Richard Halston had left. Halston sat hunched over the cafe table, scanning each page with growing urgency. The soft hum of the hotel lights pressed against the silence, making every turn of paper sound loud, like a warning bell. His coffee sat untouched, cooling beside the folder across the room. Amara Lewis watched him with careful eyes. The uniform she wore, black, clean, simple, made her blend into the background. Yet she felt the weight of the moment pulling her forward. Her grandmother's voice echoed inside her, Speak when the truth can keep someone from falling. She inhaled slowly, then stepped away from the counter. Sir, she said gently. Halston looked up, startled. He didn't expect anyone to interrupt him. She hesitated, choosing each word with precision. I noticed something in your papers earlier. One line. It looked out of place. A faint crease formed between his eyebrows. You looked at my papers. I only saw the part that slipped, she said. I wasn't trying to read your business. I just noticed the formatting was different. Smaller font. Different spacing. Halston picked up the page she pointed to. The line near the bottom, the line she had straightened now felt like a crack in a dam. He pulled the rest of the stack closer, flipping through the sections he had ignored in his panic. What exactly did you see? He asked. Amara placed her hands behind her back. Steady. The clause number didn't match the others around it, and the wording seemed hidden, like someone tried to make it blend but didn't want you to notice. Halston's pulse hammered in his throat. Show me. She circled to his side, leaning just enough to tap the line with a finger, careful not to invade his space. This one. Halston read it again, slower this time. The clause stated that, upon bankruptcy, all remaining liabilities would shift from the corporation to him personally. Another line said that certain protected assets would be transferred to a separate entity overseas, a shell company he had never approved, one that carried a name he didn't recognize. A chill spread through him. This wasn't a simple error. This was a strike. Who added this? He whispered. Amara stepped back, watching him piece together the threat. She didn't know the technical terms, but she recognized danger when she saw it. She had spent years helping her grandmother fight off small traps hidden in paperwork. This was the same pattern but on a scale that could ruin someone's entire life. Halston dug deeper into the document, flipping to the appendix referenced in the clause. There, buried between harmless notes, was a signature line marked with his initials that were perfect copies of his handwriting, only he had never signed them. It's forged, he said, breath tightening. Someone forged this. Amara nodded once. It felt wrong the moment I saw it. He stared at her, unsure how to react. Part of him felt exposed, vulnerable that a stranger had seen something so personal. Another part felt grateful, because she had seen what he had missed. You are certain this didn't belong? He asked. Very certain, she said. I've had to catch things like this before. People sometimes hide the truth in small print. Her calmness struck him. No panic. No fear. Only quiet certainty. He turned the pages again, eyes burning with disbelief and rising anger. If this filing went through, everything would be gone. Everything with my name on it. And someone else would gain, Amara said softly. Halston pressed both hands to the table. The papers shook under the pressure. This isn't a mistake. This is a setup. He saw the pattern now, the hidden clause, the forged initials, the asset transfer to a foreign shell. It was a chain built with care. Someone wanted him to lose everything while they walked away with pieces of his company. Only a person with deep access could have buried such a clause. Only someone he trusted enough to sign without question. His vision narrowed as the answer came to him like a blow. Calder, his CFO, the man he had defended through every accusation, every rumor. The betrayal felt heavy, like a door slamming shut inside him as Amara stepped back, giving him space. Halston's eyes fixed on the forged clause again. A truth clearer than dawn settled over him. This could only have been inserted by someone he trusted, and the clock was still ticking toward 8 a.m. The plan to destroy Richard Halston had been built quietly, brick by a man who stood beside him for years. Halston shoved the altered papers back into the folder and rose from the cafe table so fast the chair shuddered. The clock above the counter showed 7:32 a.m. He had less than 30 minutes before the bankruptcy filing meeting began, less than 30 minutes before the forged clause could become law. Amara stepped back as he moved, her hands clasped behind her apron to hide the tremor running through them. She hadn't meant to be involved. She only noticed a detail, but now the detail felt like a door she'd pushed open, revealing something dark behind it. Halston's voice cracked under the weight of urgency. I need to know who drafted the final version of these documents. Your legal team? Amara asked quietly. They wouldn't hide something like this, he said. Only someone with access to both the drafts and my signature stamp could have done it. His mind landed on the same name again, Calder Royce, his CFO. The man he trusted like family. Halston grabbed his phone and dialed Calder's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. He tried again, straight to voicemail. Something inside him clenched. Calder was supposed to be at the office, waiting for the final meeting. He was always early, always prepared, always calm. Amara watched Halston's face change, part shock, part anger, part realization. He's not picking up, she whispered. He doesn't want to, Halston replied, his voice colder now. He knows where I'm supposed to be at 8. He knows I'd be too busy to double-check anything. He snapped open the folder again and pulled out a printed email attached to the backhand email he barely glanced at the night before. Amara leaned in, cautious but curious. The email showed a timeline Calder had written. Final documents to be delivered to RH at 6 a.m. Filing meeting at 8 o'clock. Transfer triggered immediately upon signature. Amara pointed to the line. That's too fast, isn't it? It's faster than any normal process, Halston said. There should be reviews, approvals, at least 3 signatures. Calder cut everyone else out. He flipped to another sheet. A wiring instruction was attached to the back of the forged clause. It listed an offshore account named Britain Holdings, a shell company registered overseas. Next to it was a contact name. C. Royce. Amara's breath caught. He put his name on it. He didn't think I'd ever look, Halston said. He thought I'd sign, fall apart, and disappear. The room felt smaller. The walls seemed to push inward. How long has he been planning this? Amara asked. Months, Halston whispered. Maybe years. He remembered every time Calder suggested streamlining procedures, cutting certain approvals, handling paperwork himself. At the time it felt efficient. Now it felt like a trap he had walked into willingly. Halston's hand shook not with fear, but with a rising sense of betrayal that burned hot and sharp. He's trying to force the filing before I find out, he said. If the court receives the documents with the forged clause before I arrive, the transfer activates. And you lose everything, Amara finished. He nodded once. The weight of it pressed down on him like a falling beam. Amara touched the back of a chair to steady herself. She didn't want to be part of this, yet she couldn't step away. She had seen the truth first. That mattered now. Halston pulled in a deep breath. I need to get to the office now. I have to stop him. How? She asked. By proving the document was altered. By showing the court the forged clause. But I can only do that if I get there before Calder does. He checked the clock again. 7:41 a.m. 19 minutes. Amara swallowed hard. Do you want me to come with you? Halston paused, surprised. She didn't know him anything. She was just a waitress who noticed what others missed. But sometimes the smallest voice saw the clearest truth. Yes, he said. You saw the error. You're the only witness. She nodded once, her uniform still neat, still symbolic of the responsibilities she didn't ask for but stepped into anyway. Halston grabbed his coat and the folder, rushing toward the exit. Behind him, Amara glanced at the printed email one more time. A final line at the bottom made her blood run cold. C. Royce departing now for courthouse filing. Calder was already on his way. The clock struck 7:53 a.m., and every second that followed felt like a fuse burning toward disaster. Halston pushed through the hotel doors with Amara close behind him. The folder clutched under his arm like a shield. The early morning air hit them with a sharp coldness, carrying the scent of traffic and urgency. A taxi screeched to a stop as Halston waved it down. Courthouse, he said, breath tight. Amara slid in beside him. She kept her hands folded, but her pulse raced. She had never imagined riding through the city with a billionaire, racing to stop a crime buried in fine print. Yet here she was, caught between fear and duty, wearing a uniform that symbolized quiet strength against hidden corruption. The taxi weaved through traffic. Every red light felt like a warning. Every minute felt stolen. At 7:58, the courthouse came into view, a tall building with stone pillars, cold and unmoving. Like a judge before judgment is spoken, Halston leaped out before the taxi stopped fully. Come on, he said, urgency cracking his voice. Amara followed, gripping her apron as though it could give her courage. Inside, the courthouse felt colder. The halls stretched long and silent, echoing with distant footsteps. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering slightly, as if mirroring Halston's nerves. They passed the security doors. A guard looked up, sensing the speed in their steps. Filing room, Halston asked. Second floor. The guard said. End of the hall. They ran out. Their footsteps echoed sharply off the tile, bouncing against the walls like a warning drum. Halston checked the time again. 7:59 a.m. Amara swallowed. We're not too late. We can't be. Halston's breath hitched. If Calder files before I get there, the forged clause becomes part of the legal record. The transfer triggers instantly. Everything I built. Gone. Amara stepped closer as they reached the stairs. Then we stop him. Her voice was small but steady. It grounded him. They reached the filing room doors, large metal and thick, with a small window showing a stock room inside. A long table sat in the middle. A clerk was setting up papers, and standing by the table, pen in hand, was Calder Royce. He turned toward them as they entered. His calm expression cracked for the first time. Calder straightened his suit jacket. Richard, you're early. You forged my signature, Halston said, voice sharp as glass. Calder gave a tight, practiced smile. You're under stress. We agreed this was the best way to protect what remains. You inserted a clause transferring assets to an offshore account with your initials on it. Halston snapped. You tried to bury me. The clerk froze, eyes moving between them. Calder stepped forward, still pretending control. Richard, let's not make a scene. The documents are ready. It's time to sign. Your investors expect I'm not here to sign, Halston said. I'm here to stop the filing. Calder's jaw clenched. You can't. The process is already. It's not complete, Amara said suddenly. The room fell silent. Calder looked at her, confusion shifting to annoyance. Who is this? Halston answered before she could. The person who saw what you tried to hide. Amara stepped forward, lifting the folder with both hands. Her uniform sleeves brushed softly as she moved. Simple fabric carrying a truth heavy enough to break a scheme years in the making. She placed the page with the buried clause on the table. "This line doesn't match the others," she said, voice calm but firm. "Smaller font, different spacing. The initials are copied, and the clause number doesn't fit the sequence." The clerk leaned in. His eyes widened. Calder's face tightened. "This is absurd. She isn't qualified to." "She's right," the clerk said, interrupting him. "This formatting is irregular. This clause shouldn't be here." Halston opened the next sheet, the wiring instruction. "And this account leads to Britain Holdings, registered overseas. Signed by C. Royce." The clerk turned pale. "Sir, we can't process these papers. Not with this discrepancy." Calder stepped back, panic seeping through the cracks of his calm mask. "Listen to me, this is a misunderstanding. Richard gave approval last night. I didn't approve anything," Halston said. "And now everyone here knows it." He handed the forged documents to the clerk. "I'm formally halting the filing, effective immediately." The clerk nodded. "The bankruptcy is paused pending investigation." The words echoed through the stock room like a verdict. Calder's expression collapsed, not loudly, but quietly, like a structure that finally gives way after leaning too long on lies. Amara watched him with steady eyes. The truth was standing in the open now. The clerk stamped the halt order, the sound echoing like a final blow. Amara exhaled slowly. They had stopped the filing in real time. At the very second it almost destroyed everything. The moment the filing was halted, the balance of power flipped like a coin landing on its edge. The stark courtroom, air still hummed with tension as Calder Royce was escorted into a side office by security. His calm mask had shattered, replaced by the tight expression of someone watching years of secret planning collapse in minutes. Halston stood, motionless near the long table, the cancelled documents resting between his hands. They no longer felt heavy with betrayal. Now they felt heavy with responsibility. Amara remained a few steps behind him, unsure where to stand. She wasn't part of the legal world. She wasn't part of Halston's world at all. But for the past hour, she had been in the center of it. A detective entered the room, flashing a badge. "Mr. Halston, we need a statement. Evidence suggests deliberate fraud." Halston nodded. "You'll have everything." As he handed over the forged pages, Amara stepped back again, hoping to fade from view. Instead, the detective turned to her. "And you are?" Halston spoke before she could. "She's the one who caught the error. Without her, I would have signed." The detective raised his brows. "Then we need her statement too." Amara flinched at the unexpected attention. While the detective left to review documents, Halston finally turned fully toward her. His voice dropped, no longer rushed, no longer sharp. "You saved me from losing everything," he said. She looked down at her hands. "I just noticed something. Anyone could have." "No," Halston said. "I had lawyers, advisors, auditors, people paid to protect the company. They didn't see it." He paused, realizing the truth behind his own words. "I didn't see it," he added quietly, "because I trusted Calder without question, because I thought my position made me safe." Amara shifted uncomfortably. Compliments felt too large on her shoulders. "I didn't do it for thanks," she said. I couldn't ignore it." Her words struck him harder than he expected. He remembered all the times he had brushed past people in uniforms, servers, guards, assistants, without a second thought. He remembered how easily he dismissed voices that came from anywhere but the top dot. Now the clearest warning had come from someone he had never noticed before today. "Amara," he said slowly, "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you a change." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Just be careful who you trust." "And who I overlook," he added. The detective returned. "Mr. Halston, we've contacted the regulatory office. An investigation is opening immediately. Calder Royce is being held for further questioning." Halston's shoulders sagged, not in defeat, but in release. The danger had shifted away from him at last. The detective turned to Amara. "Your statement helped confirm the forged clause. That makes you the primary civilian witness." Amara stiffened. "I didn't expect all of this." The detective's tone softened. "Most people who catch fraud don't expect it, but truth has a way of showing up in strange places." He guided her toward the corner of the room, where another officer waited to record her statement. Halston watched her walk across the stark floor, the simple black uniform moving with quiet dignity, a symbol of someone the world had underestimated. When she finished giving her statement, Halston approached her again. "My board will hear about what you did," he said. "Not because I want to parade you, but because they need to understand how close we came to losing everything." "I don't want attention," Amara replied softly. "I just want to go back to work." "You will," Halston said, "but not without knowing you changed the course of something much bigger than you." A faint unease flickered in her eyes. She didn't want fame or credit. She only wanted truth to stand where lies had been placed. As investigators moved through the filing room, gathering evidence and documenting each forged page, Amara stepped to the hallway window. Morning light spilled across the floor, steady and clear. For the first time, she understood the weight of the simple lesson her grandmother taught her. Truth doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it waits for someone brave enough to notice the smallest line. And today, that quiet truth had come from an unexpected voice, her own. The same pen that nearly destroyed Richard Holston now waited on the table to rebuild everything he had almost lost. A week had passed since the halted filing. The investigation into Calder Royce was underway, and the company, shaken but standing, was preparing for a new chapter. Holston's board gathered in a bright, glass-walled conference room that once felt like a throne room but now felt more like a mirror. Everything was visible. Nothing could hide. Holston stood at the head of the long table. His posture was straighter, not with pride, but with clarity. In front of him lay a new stack of documents, a full restructuring plan, crafted with transparent steps, shared authority, and strict oversight. And the pen, polished silver, the same one he once feared, rested beside it, no longer a trap, now a tool. Amara sat near the back of the room, wearing a simple blouse instead of her cafe uniform. She didn't blend in as easily here, and she felt every eye on her. She wasn't used to being in spaces like this, spaces built for power. But Holston insisted she attend. "You were part of saving this company," he told her. "You should see how it's rebuilt." She sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. The board members asked questions, hard questions. Some doubted Holston's judgment. Others feared public embarrassment. A few seemed wary of Amara's presence. Unsure why a waitress was in a corporate meeting, Holston didn't avoid their concerns. "I failed because I trusted the wrong person and ignored the people I should have seen," he said. "This company collapsed from the inside, not because of the market but because of our own blindness." He looked at Amara as he spoke. "We need new eyes, new voices, honesty from every level, not just from those with titles." The room fell quiet. One board member cleared her throat. "And how do you propose we prevent anything like this again?" Holston gestured to the new plan. "We rebuild with transparency, shared control, regular audits. No single person, especially not me, holds unchecked power." He picked up the silver pen. Amara watched as the light hit the metal. Last time she saw that pen, it hovered over forged ruin. Today, it hovered over a blueprint for recovery. Holston paused before signing. "Before we finish, there's one more step," he said. He walked to where Amara sat. The room shifted with confusion. "Amara," he said, "I can't repay what you did. You didn't save just my company. You saved every employee depending on it. I want to offer you a position, oversight assistant in our compliance department. You have a rare eye. We need that." A soft gasp traveled through the room. Amara's heart thudded up. "I don't know anything about corporate work. You know how to catch what others miss," Holston replied. "We'll train you, and you'll be protected, not used." She looked down, overwhelmed. This wasn't attention. It wasn't praise. It was trust, offered carefully, not pushed. "I'll try," she whispered. Holston nodded. Trying is how change begins. He returned to the head of the table and opened the recovery plan. With deliberate movement, he lifted the pen, the symbol of past danger, now reclaimed. He pressed the tip to the page and signed. The sound was small, but it echoed through the room with meaning. The beginning of rebuilding, not collapsing. Amara exhaled, the tension leaving her shoulders for the first time. The company felt like a place where truth could breathe. As the meeting ended, Amara stepped to the window. Morning light washed across the city below, bright, steady, unbroken. She understood something simple and powerful. Dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't demand a stage. It speaks in small truths, quiet bravery, and choices that protect what's right. And sometimes, that quiet dignity is strong enough to turn the course of power itself.